Good evening. My name is Corrie and I'm reading to you from Corrie ten Boom's book, The Hiding Place. At the moment, we are in chapter 7, Easy. It was chapter 7b. We stopped last night, just a little bit into a paragraph, and I'm just going to read to you again, this the beginning of the paragraph. Although we had a friend at the telephone exchange, we could never be sure that our line was not tapped. So we developed a system for our coding, for coding our underground messages in terms of watches. We have a women's watch here that needs repairing, but I can't find a mainspring. Do you know who might have one? And that would mean we have a Jewish woman in need of a hiding place, and we can't find one among our regular contacts. Or I have a watch here with a face that's causing difficulty. One of the numbers has worked loose and it's holding back the hand. Do you know anyone who does this kind of repair work? And that would mean we have a Jew here whose features are especially Semitic. Do you know anyone who would be willing to take an extra risk? Or, I'm sorry, but the child's watch you left with us is not repairable. Do you have the receipt? And that would mean a Jewish child has died in one of our houses. We need a burial permit. One morning in the middle of June, the telephone rang with this message. We have a man's watch here and that's giving us trouble. We can't find anyone to repair it. For one thing, the face is very old-fashioned. So, a Jew whose features gave him away. This was the hardest kind of person to place. Send the watch over and I'll see what we can do in our own shop, I said. Promptly at 7 that evening, the side doorbell rang. I glanced at the mirror in the window of the dining room where we were still sitting over tea of rose leaves and cherry stems. Even from the side of his head, I could tell that this was our old-fashioned watch. His form, his clothes, his very stance were music hall comedy Jewish. I ran down to the door. Do come in. The smiling, slender man in his early 30s, with his protruding ears, balding head, and minuscule glasses, gave an elaborate bow. I liked him instantly. Once the door was closed, he took out a pipe. The very first thing I must ask, he said, is whether or not I should leave behind my good friend the pipe. Mayor Mossel and his pipe are not easily separated, but for you. Mayor Mossel and his pipe are not easily separated, but for you, kind lady, should the smell get into your drapes, I would gladly say goodbye to my friend Nicotine. I laughed. Of all the Jews who had come to our house, this was the first to enter Gully, and with a question about his own comfort. Of course you must keep your pipe, I said. My father smokes a cigar when he can get one these days. Ah, these days. Mayor Mossel raised arms and shoulders in an enormous shrug. What do you expect? when the barbarians have overrun the camp. I took him up to the dining room. There were 7 seated at the table, a Jewish couple waiting placement, and 3 underground workers in addition to Father and Betsy. Mayor Mossel's eyes went straight to Father. "But," he cried, one of the patriarchs." It was exactly the right thing to say to Father. "But," he returned with equal good humor, "a brother of the chosen people." "Can you recite the 160th Psalm, Opa?" Mayor said. Father beamed. "Of course there is no Psalm 166. The Psalter stopped with 150. It must be a joke. And nothing could please Father better than a scriptural joke." "The 166th Psalm? Shall I recite it to you?" Mayor asked. Father gave a bow of assent, and Mayor plunged into verse. "But that's Psalm 100, Father interrupted, and then his face lit up. Of course, Psalm 66 started with the identical words. Mayor had asked for the 100th and the 66th Psalm. For the rest of the evening, I could hear Father chuckling, "Psalm 166. At 8:45, Father took the old brass-bound Bible from its shelf. He opened to the reading in Jeremiah, where he had left off the night before. Then, with sudden inspiration, passed the Bible across the table to Mayor. "I would consider it an honor if you would read for us tonight," Father said. Lifting the book lovingly, Mayor rose to his feet. From a pocket came a small prayer cap, and then, from deep in his throat, half sung, half pleaded, came the words of the ancient prophet, so feelingly and achingly that we seemed to hear the cry of the exile himself. Mayor Mossel, he told us afterward, had been cantor in the synagogue in Amsterdam. For all his light-heartedness, he had suffered much. Most of his family had been arrested. His wife and children were in hiding on a farm in the north, which had declined to accept Mayor for obvious reasons, he said with a grimace of his own unmistakable features. And gradually it dawned on all of us that this endearing man was at the BG to stay. It was certainly not an ideal place, but for Mayor, nothing could be ideal right now. "At least," I told him one evening, "your name doesn't have to give you away too." Ever since the days when Willem was studying church history, I had remembered the venerable 4th century church father Eusebius. "I think we can call you Eusebius," I decided. We were sitting in Tante Jance's front room with Kik and some other young men who had made us a delivery of forged travel permits, too late to get home by curfew. Mayor leaned back and stared at the ceiling pensively. He took his pipe out of his mouth. "Eusebius Mossel," he said, tasting the words. "No, it doesn't sound quite right. Eusebius Gentile Mossel." We all laughed. "Don't be a goose," Betsy said. "You must change both names." Kik looked slyly at Father. "Opa, how about Smith?" That seemed a popular name these days. It does seem so, said father, not catching the joke. Extraordinary popular. And Eusebius Smith it became. Changing Mayer's name was easy. At once he became Eusy. But getting Eusy to eat non-kosher food was something else. The problem, of course, was that we were grateful for food of any kind. We stood in line for hours, this third year of the occupation, to get whatever was possible and what was available. One day, the paper announced that coupon number 4 was good for pork sausage. It was the first meat we had in weeks. Lovingly, Betsy prepared the feast, saving every drop of fat for favouring other foods later. Easy, Betsy said as she carried the steaming casserole of pork and potatoes to the table. The day has come. Easy knocked the ashes out of his pipe and considered his plight out loud. He, who had always eaten kosher, he, the oldest son of an oldest son of a respected family, in fact, he, Mayor Mossel Eusebius Smith, was seriously being asked to eat pork. Betsy placed a helping of sausage and potato before him. Bon appetit! The tantalizing odor reached our meat-starved palates. Eusy wet his lip with his tongue. Of course, he said. There's a provision for this in the Talmud. He speared the meat with his fork, bit hungrily, and rolled his eyes heavenward in pure pleasure. And I'm going to start hunting for it too, he said, just as soon as dinner is over. As if Eusy's arrival had broken down a last hesitation, within a week there were 3 new permanent additions to the household. First there was Job, our current apprentice, whose daily trip from his parents' home in the suburbs had twice nearly ended in seizure for the factory transport. The second time it happened, his parents asked if he could stay at the BG, and we agreed. The other 2 were Henk, a young lawyer, and Leendert, a school teacher. Leendert made an especially important contribution to the secret life of the BG. He installed our electric warning system. By now, I had learned to make the nighttime trip out to Pickwick's almost as skillfully as could Kik. One evening, when I had gratefully accepted a cup of coffee, my wall-eyed friend sat me down for a lecture. Cornelia, he said, settling his bulk on the velvet chair too small for him. I understand that you have no alarm system in your house. This is purest folly. Also, I am given to believe that you are not carrying on regular drills for your guests. I was always amazed at how well Pickwick knew what went on at the BG. You know that a raid may come any day, Pickwick continued. I don't see how you can avoid one. Scores of people in and out, and an NSB agent living over Khan's up the street. Your secret room is no good to you if people can't get to it in time. I know this Leendert. He is a good man and very passable electrician. Get him to put a buzzer in every room with a door on the with a door or a window on the street. Then hold practice drills until your people can disappear in that room without a trace in less than a minute. I'll send someone to get you started." Leendert did the electrical work that weekend. He installed a buzzer near the top of the stairs, loud enough to be heard all over the house, but not outside. Then he placed buttons to sound the buzzer at every vantage point where trouble might first be spotted. One button went beneath the dining room windowsill, just below the mirror, which gave onto the side door. Another went into the downstairs hall, just inside that door, and a third inside the front door on the Barteljorisstraat. He also put a button behind the counter in the shop, and one in each workbench, as well as beneath the windows in Tante Jans's rooms. We were ready for our first trial run. The 4 acknowledged members of our household the 4 unacknowledged members of our household were already climbing up to the secret room 2 times a day. In the morning, to store their night clothes, bedding, and toilet articles, and in the evening, to put away their day things. Members of our group, too, who had to spend the night, kept raincoats, hats, anything they had brought with them in that room. Altogether, that made a good deal of traffic in and out of my small bedroom, smaller now, indeed, by nearly a yard. Many nights my last waking sight would be Easy in long robe and tasselled nightcap, handing his day clothes through the secret panel. But the purpose of the drills was to see how rapidly people could reach the room at any hour of the day or night without prior notice. A tall, sallow-faced young man arrived from Pickwick one morning to teach me how to conduct the drills. "Smit!" Father exclaimed when the man introduced himself. "Truly, it is most astonishing. We've had one Smit after another here lately. Now, you bear a great resemblance to—" Mr. Smit disentangled himself gently from Father's genealogical inquiries and followed me upstairs. "Meal times," he said. "That's a favourite hour for a raid. Also the middle of the night." He strode from room to room, pointing everywhere to evidence that more than 3 people lived in the house. "Watch waste baskets and ashtrays." He paused in a bedroom door. "If the raid comes at night, they must not only take their sheets and blankets, but get the mattress turned. That's the SD's favourite trick, feeling for a warm spot on a bed." Mr. Smit stayed for lunch. There were 11 of us at the table that day, including a Jewish lady who had arrived the night before, and a Gentile woman and her small daughter, members of our underground who acted as escorts. The 3 of them were leaving for a farm in Brabant right after lunch. Here is a photo of 2 Jewish women during an actual drill of the hiding place in 1943. Betsy had just passed around a stew, so artfully prepared you scarcely missed the meat when, without warning, Mr. Smit leaned back in his chair and pushed the button below the window. Above us the buzzer sounded. People sprang to their feet, snatching up glasses and plates, scrambling for the stairs, while the cat clawed halfway up the curtain in consternation. Cries of "Faster, faster! Not so loud!" and "Shh, shh! You are spilling it!" reached us as Father, Betsy, and I hastily rearranged table and chairs to look like a lunch for 3 in progress. "No, leave my place," Mr. Smith instructed. Why shouldn't you have a guest for lunch? The lady and the little girl could have stayed too." At last we were seated again, and silence reigned upstairs. The whole process had taken 4 minutes. A little later we were all gathered again around the dining room table. Mr. Smith set out before him the incriminating evidence he had found. 2 spoons and a piece of carrot on the stairs. Pipe ashes in the unoccupied bedroom. Everyone looked at Eusy, who blushed to the tips of his large ears. "And also," he pointed to the hats of mother and daughter still dangling from the pegs on the dining room wall, "if you have to hide, stop and think what you arrived with. Besides which, you are all simply too slow." The next night I sounded the alarm again, and this time we shaved 1 minute 33 seconds off our run. By our 5th trial, we were down to 2 minutes. We never did achieve Pickwick's ideal of under a minute. But with practice, we learned to jump up from whatever we were doing and get those who had to hide in the secret room in 70 seconds. Father, Tuus, and I worked on stalling techniques, which we would use if the Gestapo came through the shop door. Betsy invented a similar strategy for the side door. With those delaying tactics, we hoped we could gain a life-saving 70 ticks of a second hand. Because the drills struck so close to the fear that haunted each of our guests, never spoken, always present, we tried to keep these times from becoming altogether serious. Like a game, we'd tell each other, a race to beat our own record. One of our group owned the bakery in the next street. Early in the month, I would deposit a supply of sugar coupons with him. Then, when I decided it was time for a drill, I would go to him for a bag of cream puffs. An inexpressible treat in those sweetless days, to be secreted in my workbench and brought out as a reward for a successful practice. Each time the order of cream puffs was larger, for by now, in addition to the workers whom we wanted to initiate into the system, we had 3 more permanent boarders. Tia da Costa, Mita Mosantro, and Mary Italy. Mary Italy, at 76, the oldest of our guests, was also the one who posed the greatest problem. The moment Mary stepped through the door, I heard the asthmatic wheezing, which had made other hosts unwilling to take her in. Since her ailment compromised the safety of others, we took up the problem in caucus. The 7 most concerned, Eusy, Job, Henk, Leendert, Meta, Tia, and Mary herself, joined Father, Betsy, and me in Tante Jans's front room. There is no sense in pretending, I began. Mary has a difficulty, especially after climbing stairs, that could put you all in danger. In the silence that followed, Mary's labored breathing seemed especially loud. Can I speak? Yuzi asked. Of course. It seems to me that we are all here in your house because of some difficulty or other. We are the orphan children, the ones nobody else wanted. Any one of us is jeopardizing all the others. I vote that Mary stay. Good, said Lawyer Henk. Let's put to a vote. Hands began raising, and Mary was struggling to speak. Secret ballots, she brought out at last. No one should be embarrassed. Henk brought a sheet of paper from the desk at the next room and tore it to 9 small straps. You too, he said, handing ballots to Betsy, father, and me. If we were discovered, you suffered the same as us. He handed around pencils. Mark no if it's too great a risk, and yes if you think she belongs here. For a moment, pencils scratched. Then Henk collected the folded ballots. He opened them in silence, then reached over and dropped them in Mary's lap. 9 little scraps of paper, 9 times the word yes. And so our family was formed. Others stayed with us a day or a week, but these 7 remained, the nucleus of our happy household. That it could have been happy at such a time and in such circumstances was largely a tribute to Betsy. Because our guests' physical lives were so restricted, evenings under Betsy's direction became the door to the wide world. Sometimes we had concerts with Leendert on the violin and Tia, a truly accomplished musician, on the piano. Or Betsy would announce an evening of Vondel, the Dutch Shakespeare, with each of us reading a part. One night a week, she talked Ilse into giving Hebrew lessons. Another night, Meta taught Italian. The evening's activity had to be kept brief because the city now had electricity only a short while each night, and candles had to be hoarded for emergencies. When the lamps flickered and dimmed, we would wind back down to the dining room where my bicycle was set up on its stand. One of us would climb onto it and others taking chairs, and then while the rider pedaled furiously to make the headlight glow bright, someone would pick up the chapter from the night before. We changed cyclist and reader often as legs or voice grew tired, reading our way through histories, novels, and plays. Father always went upstairs after prayers at 9:15, but the rest of us lingered, reluctant to break the circle, sorry to see the evening end. Oh, well, Yuzi would say hopefully as we started at last to our rooms. Maybe there'll be a drill tonight. I haven't had a cream puff in nearly a week. Here is a photo of the BG family in 1943, consisting of, from the left, Corrie, Father, Betsy, she's third from the right, Jewish guests and underground workers. Next time, chapter 8, Storm Clouds Gather. Good night.